Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo! Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico. Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
Lots of you had messaged on Instagram wanting me to talk a little bit more about the transition from 1 child to 2. One of the first things you obviously have to do is to tell your first child that there is going to be a sibling and that you are going to have another one. I was very eyes open to the fact he may be completely disinterested. He may ask the baby to go back. You are having a toddler and a newborn baby, and newborn babies sleep a lot. It may not always be where you want them to sleep, which is why carriers are so helpful. But ultimately, they're very different because they stay still. Hello, I'm Pip, and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth, and beyond. This week, I am joining you solo, although actually there is a high chance that I'm going to have a baby Alfie joining me at any point, but we're going to roll with it. It's nap time. Lots of you had messaged on Instagram wanting me to talk a little bit more about the transition from 1 child to 2. And it's something that I know in my second pregnancy with Alfie was like an all-consuming worry and concern, so much more than kind of the pregnancy or the birth itself. It was all about Finley and how he was going to adapt having a little brother, how we were going to navigate that, what on earth you do with 2 children. I mean, I literally could not comprehend what you do with 2 and how you juggle that situation. So I hope that for some of you listening who are perhaps in that predicament at the moment, that this will be a really helpful conversation. And as always, with everything I talk about on the podcast, if there is a question or something you want to talk to me about off the back of anything I speak about, then do always drop me a DM at midwife_pip on Instagram so that I can get back to you and help you a little bit more as well. So I guess let's strip it back to the beginning. One of the first things you obviously have to do is to tell your first child that there is going to be a sibling and that you are going to have another one. So we did this with Finley around just after, I think, our 12-week scan. He was 2.5, so he kind of understood babies. And so, yeah, we showed him the scan picture, told him it was a baby, explained it was in mummy's tummy, seemed to understand some of it, and then would like prance around lifting his t-shirt up, telling me he had a baby in his tummy. So who knows how much of that went in. But then we just, I suppose, throughout my pregnancy, kind of trickled the idea of a baby into his life. So we had some books that we read. As my bump grew, we kind of talked to him, let him read to the baby, let him share toys with the baby, feel the baby kick. He had a baby doll kind of toy anyway. So we would be bathing the baby and, oh, you know, this is what we're going to do with your baby. We also had tried to, I guess, let him understand that there was a baby coming, but I was really cautious to not oversell the idea of this incredible playmate that was going to be so much fun and amazing, because in reality, babies don't do anything. So I kind of didn't want to disappoint him. So I very much was like, you're going to be able to help mummy with this with the baby, and those kind of things, instead of like, this is this amazing play date. It was more, do you think you'd be able to help mummy, change the baby's nappy, or help mummy bath the baby? That'd be really helpful, thank you so much. And making him feel big and excited with that aspect, rather than the whole he's going to be able to chase you around the living room, because I feel like then the baby would be one big old disappointment. One of the things that helped us, I think, personally as a family, but naturally this is really different kind of for everybody, was we found out that we were having a little boy, and we named him Alfie. And then so Finley knew he was having a little baby brother called Alfie. And I think that kind of helped to have that name, and kind of go through Finley's old clothes and explain that these were going to fit the baby and they once fitted him, and getting old baby pictures out and things like that to try and kind of, I imagined it like this little kind of jigsaw in his brain that we were trying to almost piece together to help him make sense of. So I think for us, having a name and saying it was a baby really helped. His nursery were wonderful as well. And there's obviously like babies in the baby room at nursery. So often he would come home saying that, he'd been helping the babies, and he would tell them that he was having a baby called Alfie. And I think they sort of poured that conversation into some of the nursery setup as well. So he was getting it from other people too, which was probably really great for him. We were obviously very concerned about the meeting of baby and Finley. So we did buy a present from Finley to the baby. So he bought Alfie his comforter, and he helped me wrap that up and things as well. So again, that kind of trying to piece together that understanding aspect. And then baby Alfie very kindly bought Finley a gift as well. So my plan was, if the whole a baby has arrived in our house was a massive letdown, we could caveat that with the excitement of, but look how great, this baby's really kind, he's bought you a present, in the hope that would kind of perk him up a little bit. So we got Tony's box for him with some of his favourite little characters. And my rationale for that gift was, as I'm sure other expectant second-time mums' minds were kind of playing on, was I knew I wanted to be able to breastfeed Alfie like I had Finley. Kind of had this vision of me sat, or breastfeeding Alfie or needing to see to his needs, and Finley feeling really pushed out. So my thought was he had a toy that was special and that I was going to keep separate, so that when I needed those moments of doing something for Alfie, breastfeeding him, getting to sleep, etc., that was going to be the moment where Finley got his special present from his brother. So he kind of had something special for him to do that was a bit different and exciting, when I couldn't be giving him that kind of one-on-one attention that he's obviously been so used to. So that was my kind of plan in pregnancy. And I'll talk a little bit about why I didn't actually need any of that. But I think for my headspace, it was really nice to think, right, when I need to do this for the baby, Finley's going to have this. So he can sit with us and, play with the Tony's characters or listen to his favourite stories. So we're sort of still together, and I can engage and talk with him still without being like necessarily physically playing with him in that moment. My brand new book, Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth, is now available. So much more than a book, this is a guide that allows me to hold your hand through your birth preparation journey. With over a decade of experience and knowledge packed in to ensure you really are empowered in the way you deserve to achieve a positive birth, regardless of the twists and turns that crop up. Make sure that you get your hands on Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth book now, and are empowered to have the birth experience that you deserve. Then one of my other concerns, which I know will be echoed amongst many, was what are we actually going to do with our toddler when I go to have a baby? Because like so many modern families, we don't have family on the doorstep. So we had a great plan in place. We spoke to nursery and said, look, these people may be picking Finley up if I go into labour. So they kind of knew what to expect as well. We had friends that live in the same village as us that were our like immediate, you know, emergency scooping up of Finley. He adores them. They have a little boy, a similar age, who he absolutely adores as well. So I knew in my headspace, if we suddenly had to like abandon him on their doorstep or they needed to quickly run to our house, for him, that would be a big fun adventure and he'd be delighted. Equally, if, they were there in the morning or needed to put him to bed at night, I knew that he was comfortable in their company, which as a mum is just so important, isn't it? Like, I don't know how I could have laboured with Alfie not knowing that Finley was safe and comfortable and being well looked after. So felt really blessed that our friends were our like immediate emergency plan. And then the plan was to then phone my parents so they could make their way up, but they're about 2 hours away. So we needed like a immediate someone to scoop us while we then kind of planned for them to come. So that worked really well, actually. And those of you that have listened to my birth story or read my birth story will know this. I kind of started to go into labour in sort of the day, but I wasn't really sure. And then by the afternoon, my husband was like, nah, yeah, this is labour, Pip. Come on. And I was a bit in denial. I thought I was still very comfy, very happy. But we then made plans for our friends to do the pickup from preschool. So it ends up not being some kind of crazy rush, which was really, really nice. Finley thought it was really fun because he had a trip in a different car, got to go and play with his friends' toys and all that kind of fun stuff. And then it meant my parents had a bit of time to calmly get down as well. So that worked beautifully. And then I always had this vision of introducing Finley to his little brother, in that I didn't want us to be holding him. I kind of wanted Finley to be able to go and explore him in a non-pressurized environment in his own time. I was very eyes open to the fact he may be completely disinterested. He may ask the baby to go back. All of these toddler, immature brain emotions, I was completely accepting of. It may not be this beautiful, loving moment that we all hope it will be. And that's okay and that's normal. And it doesn't mean there is an issue. That is just normal toddler emotions. So we were lucky in that we managed to go and have a baby and then get back into our bed that night because it was all quite quick and smooth. So the next morning, I knew Finley would be getting up at about 7 a.m. So I made sure that Alfie was clean, dry, fed, comfortable, settled in his Moses basket in the living room so that Finley could come downstairs and meet his baby brother. Well, that morning, Finley decided he was going to have a lie-in. Thank you very much. So there we were, me and my husband, like really excited for the boys to meet each other. And in reality, we were just sat waiting for Finley to wake up. He's not really had a lie-in since, but typically on the one morning we were like so excited for him to get up. He didn't. But thankfully, Alfie blessed us with a good sleep. So he was still settled in his Moses basket when Finley did wake up. So he came downstairs just like normal. Daddy kind of alluded to the fact there was someone for him to meet. And then he must have twigged the Moses basket equaled baby brother, which I hadn't really talked loads about, I suppose. But the Moses basket had been obviously in the house and it had been in the living room. And I had explained to him this was where the baby was going to go. So that obviously really stuck in his brain because as soon as he saw the Moses basket, his little face just lit up with this beautiful innocence and excitement. And he was just ecstatic. It's Alfie, it's my baby brother, and went over to explore him and wanted to cuddle him and kiss him. And it was incredible. And so those gifts that I had planned on, lessening the disappointment if he wasn't overly happy that this baby had landed in our house weren't needed. And we actually didn't open them for like weeks, to be honest, until there was some rainy afternoon because he was just besotted with his brother. And I think part of that probably was that preparation we did. And I think he really did know that there was a baby coming, but he didn't have any expectation that the baby was going to be able to play with him like his playmates at that stage. So I think he he kind of knew what to expect, and this baby was coming and he was going to help look after it, as opposed to it was going to be this friend that was going to be able to play with him around the clock, which I think was helpful for his little brain. So yeah, that was really good. That was, I mean, just a beautiful moment. And then again, we've just always had no expectations because, emotions that in society as adults we almost demonize. So things like jealousy or competition and frustration that we often consider really negative are also really human and normal, especially for toddlers. So we really anticipated elements of jealousy and challenging behavior. And I have to say that give little Finley his due, and Alfie's 5 months at me recording this chat with you guys, he's just shown none of it. And I know that will be partly down to his personality, and every child is completely different. But we've tried to make sure that he does still have one-to-one time with us. So when Alfie's been napping, we've tried to put Alfie in a sleep space so that then I can have some one-on-one time with Finley, even if that's 10 minutes. 10 minutes of quality, eye contact, cuddles, affection, one-on-one time has been really helpful for him. Still doing his normal routine. So he goes to his baby class, we go as well. Alfie's just in the carrier or the car seat, but his little routine and the highlights of his week haven't changed. And I think that was important. We kept him in nursery, which to be honest was great because it meant in the newborn days I had an opportunity to nap and rest. But equally, it meant he still had routine. Because like I kind of said, babies are quite boring for toddlers. So he's still got to go and play with his friends and tell his friends about his brother and beam with pride. So we still had that important routine. So I think keeping that routine for them is vital. And I think for us as well, managing expectations, being open to challenging emotions if you have to navigate them and knowing that that's normal. We haven't had what I anticipated, which was when I was holding Alfie, for Finley to really want me and fight for my attention. We really just haven't had that. We are just taking a quick pause to share some key safety information. Shockingly, new research reveals that E. coli was found in 56% of babies' bottles. There is lots of feeding advice out there, whether it is breastfeeding or bottle feeding. And one potentially life-saving aspect that's often overlooked is how to effectively sterilize your baby's feeding equipment. It is really easy for feeding equipment, such as bottles or breast pumps, to become contaminated with harmful microbes, as milk, breast or formula are an ideal breeding ground. A baby's immune system is still developing during the first 12 months, making them more at risk of becoming very sick. I recommend the Milton cold water sterilizing method to new parents. It has been used by hospitals, midwives, and healthcare professionals for many years, and I've used it personally with my boys too. The Milton method is a really easy, effective way to effectively protect your baby from harmful germs or bacteria. Milton has a wide range of great sterilizing and cleaning solutions to use at home or when out and about, helping you protect what's precious. And I don't really know why. May well just be very lucky and that's his personality type, and he's definitely really securely attached to us as his parents, which helps. But he's just been really great with the whole transition. I think perhaps the fact that he can independently play, and we've always practiced some independent play with him. So for him to go and play with his toys of his own accord when I'm feeding Alfie wasn't really an abnormal thing for him to do. Likewise, I would breastfeed Alfie whilst playing trains and reading stories. So the whole thing is definitely different to having your first, for sure, in terms of that juggle. I would always try and get Finley involved. So rather than like, oh, I can't do this now because I've got to change the baby's nappy, I'd be like, oh, yes, I love playing with your pirate ship. Bring it over here. help me change Alfie's nappy and then we can all play together. So he would love grabbing me like the nappies and the cream and kind of bringing all that together. He loves helping bath his brother. So I think getting them involved, because toddler brains love to help. They love praise. They love feeling kind of involved in things and having those opportunities to learn physically. Finley certainly does. So I think getting him involved and trying to never say, I can't do that because of the baby. I think that was a big one. I've caught myself a couple of times when I have said it, and really trying to be aware of not kind of blaming the baby for the fact that mummy can't be present, which is so easy to do because, of course, you can't do that at that time because of the baby. But just trying not to vocalize that was really helpful. Being kind to yourself. My goodness, in those early weeks, there was more screen time than was ideal in the parenting world. There was more snack bribery. There was more microwave dinners than is ideal, of course. Like, just be human and it's okay. We as parents almost seek this idea of perfectionism. And the reality is we do not need to be perfect because the world isn't perfect. So trying to raise our children in this perfect way for this imperfect world simply isn't helpful to them. So instead, actually allowing ourselves to make mistakes, to explain that, we have done something that's not as we wanted to apologize and to own up to that with our little people, I think is really powerful. And I think that's actually preparing them for the realities of the world that isn't perfect. We can take that pressure off our shoulders as parents and actually just keep it real, because that's life. That's what we're actually opening them up into. So I think that just takes some of that pressure off as well. So we have really enjoyed, on the whole, the transition from one child to two children. There are juggles. Trying to do bedtime with two children is completely bonkers at times. Sometimes it's really smooth and you nail it. Other times it's utter chaos. And I think breathing through the chaos. If something isn't working, sometimes I just abandon it all for 5 minutes and come back to it later. If neither of them are sleeping and it just feels like this big old battle, I'm like, right, for 5 minutes, we're just going to stop. We're going to stop trying to go to sleep. We're going to kind of read a story. We're going to reconnect. We're going to prolong this bath for 5 minutes and then try again, because I'm all for not having battles when you don't need to. I think you almost need to choose your battles in life. And there are certain ones, especially with a toddler, are not going to be my choice. So choosing those wisely. I definitely parent with a little bit of bribery at times. It works for us. And I would never judge parents for doing something similar. I think it's about what works for your family and kind of riding with that and taking away that judgment. So there's definitely times that are more challenging, and say bedtime and nap time with two is so much harder than with one, naturally. But equally, what I think we've noticed with Alfie is I couldn't tell you, even at 5 months, if he has a routine, what his routine is. I really, really don't know. And he probably has. If I wrote it down, he probably does have one, but it fits into our existing life more. Whereas certainly with Finley, as our first child, everything could evolve around his routine 24/7, because it could, because he had that flexibility when you've only got one child. We don't have that now. If I need to do the preschool drop off, Alfie has to go in the car seat and he'll probably fall asleep. So that's a nap. It's just different in that context. And maybe that's why personalities of second children we often hear are a little bit more relaxed, and that certainly feels the way with our boys. And I think that probably is the reason. We do a lot of baby wearing. I often have Alfie in the carrier. Often at nap times, Finley doesn't really nap anymore, but he did when Alfie was first born. And so I'd put Finley in the pram, Alfie in the carrier, I'd get my steps in, everyone gets asleep apart from me, obviously. But you find your little ways and your little routines. And I think it's really easy to feel like that is never going to happen. And how on earth is it possible? And it just kind of is. I think you also forget, when you've got a toddler, you are not having two toddlers. You are having a toddler and a newborn baby. And newborn babies sleep a lot. It may not always be where you want them to sleep, which is why carriers are so helpful. But ultimately, they're very different because they stay still. You're not chasing two people around the house. It's really different. So just remember that you're going to have a baby and a toddler, not two toddlers. Their routines will be different. And allowing yourself that degree of flexibility. If you can get help, brilliant. Because if you've got an extra pair of hands and there's two adults and two children, you can divide and conquer and it's so much easier. But those days when you're on your own, choose what's going to be your battles, choose what's going to be your priority. For me, it was always Finley likes to dress himself. So I was like, fine, dress yourself. We go out the house in all sorts. But that's okay. That's all right for me. That's not a battle I'm going to choose. I'm going to allow him to dress independently because that means that we get out the house in a positive way, much quicker, and everyone's happy. And at the end of the day, I think if I can tuck the boys into bed at night and be like, everyone has, on the whole, been happy today, that is a motherhood win for me. If they are both kicking off at the same time, I find that really triggering. So if I know Alfie's getting to a point where he's going to get a bit tired or he's going to get a bit hungry, I will try and just think ahead and give something to Finley to keep him entertained and happy for that period of time. Be that a different toy to play with, grab something out the back of the cupboard that he's not used for a while, or make sure he's got a snack ready at that point. So just trying to make sure that you only have one kicking off at once, I think is really helpful because we know we can manage that because we've done it once before. Loads of people, I think there's a bit of a scaremongering, and I think lots of people talk about, oh wow, you wait till you've got two, and it's almost this like negativity. And I can wholeheartedly say that for our family, and again, naturally it's going to be different, the transition from one to two is definitely easier from naught to one because your life's already made that massive change of this small person being your whole priority. That had already happened. There was just two of them. Whereas before that, you could sleep all night and you could just leave the house and not have to think about it. Whereas with your first, that is a big old shift. You also know, I think, with your second, that truly everything's only a phase. And I remember hearing that and hearing that and hearing that with Finley and almost getting a bit annoyed about it because when you're in that phase, it feels forever. But actually, when you've ridden that wave before and got through it, you know that it really is only a phase. So with like the newborn sleep nights, my husband and I both said, it's just a phase. It's just a phase. This isn't forever. So it hits different, I suppose. Those difficult times feel different because there is outlook. So for sure, there are parts that are more difficult. You are torn in half. You cannot give 100% to both because you only got 100% to give. It's looking at ways of having those small moments, even if it's 5-10 minutes, of complete concentrated one-to-one with each child. I think that's really, really helped with managing those emotions of us all. And then knowing that it's okay to share. And for Finley, I often say this to my husband. I spent 9 months worrying about whether we were going to damage his life by bringing him a sibling. And actually, when I watch them together and I see the bond that the boys are creating, I'm like, all we've done is give him the best gift in a brother. Because, just seeing them together, honestly, is incredible. Like, it just fills my heart so much. Finley won't get out of bed in the morning without having had Alfie in his cot for a cuddle. He is so beautifully gentle and attentive with him. It's just incredible. And sometimes when he gets frustrated and he might get really cross with me and his dad, and he'll literally run up to Alfie, pause in front of him, and just tenderly cuddle him, and he smells him. And it's almost like he's like calming himself down and regulating himself through that connection with his brother. It's beautiful. So if you are sat there thinking, how am I going to juggle 2 children? You will. You absolutely will. And it's really easy to think, oh, but what if it's too hard? What if it's a disaster? What if it's the worst thing we've ever done? Equally, I challenge you to reconsider that and think, but what if it's amazing? What if it's the best gift we ever give our first child? What if we absolutely thrive as a family of 4? Because that's really possible too. I hope that was helpful. I've talked at you, which has actually been really cathartic and reflective for me. As always, as I said at the beginning, any questions, please do drop me a message on Instagram at midwife_pip. It's been lovely to chat today. Before I head off, I need to tell you something. 68% of you who listen to my show have not hit the subscribe button. So can you do me a favour? And if you've ever enjoyed listening, hit subscribe now. It makes a huge difference, helping me to keep bringing you episodes. And together, we can then reach and empower more women on this journey. If you are a pregnant or newly postpartum listener and are looking to have the healthiest, most positive and informed journey, then my exclusive Your Pregnancy and Your Postnatal Journey courses may be for you. I work with a select number of women in a bespoke way, with unlimited access to me and my expert team for the most transformative level of support at this important time in your life. We only get one shot at getting this time right. So to get in touch and find out more, head to midwifepip.com.
Hi, I'm Sam Baker and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40.
Anyone that's worried about turning 40, I say hurry up and get here. This is where the party is. This is the good place.
Created and hosted by me, journalist and author Sam Baker. I started The Shift because I was so tired of the absence of older women's voices.
3 little injections around my eyes and suddenly I was like, oh, I just got the last year back. I'm not trying to look 30. I just want to look 42.
Where had all the women over 40 gone?
You know, nobody ever gets addicted to kale. You get addicted to things that kill you.
So I created The Shift to make a space to talk about everything from life, love, sex, to careers, confidence, mental health, menopause.
So, I mean, seriously, if you want to walk about in your pyjamas for the rest of your life, we're invisible.
Each episode I speak to an inspiring woman about her shift, the second half of our lives.
I feel very strong and think I genuinely don't care what anybody thinks of me. And that does come with age.
Join me every Tuesday, wherever you listen to your podcasts.